Hello and welcome to the Serve Asia podcast. Here you'll find stories, interviews and interesting discussions about how the good news of Jesus is being shared with the peoples of East Asia. I'm your host Ryan and I'm joined by my co-host Kat today. And on today's episode we are interviewing Levi, who is from the UK and is serving as a missionary in Japan.
Levi talked about some really interesting things, like the relationship between social media and Japanese culture, writing and blogging, and we also came up with some really good takeaways for you guys who use social media at home. So let's jump straight into the interview.
Levi, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. Could you just tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what you've been up to?
Yeah, so my name's Levi. I've heard all of the jokes about jeans and stuff, so yeah, I'm bored of them already. I've been working out in Japan the last 4 years. My first term with OMF. So first 2 years was the kind of language school and then a bit of training and stuff. And then I was doing some church planting down in Yokohama. Enjoy sports, main one being ultimate frisbee. It's a real sport, doesn't involve dogs. Also like movies, books, coffee, all the standard cliched stuff. Yeah.
So how did you get involved with going to Japan in the first place?
That is a long story. The short story is I was interested in martial arts. I wanted to become like Bruce Lee.
Oh, wow.
Ended up doing Japanese martial arts, went to university, met Japanese friends, got interested at that same time in World Mission. OMF people came, spoke to us about the needs in Japan, and so I went for a year to see what it was like, and yeah, God just really gave me a heart to commit long term for Japan.
That's great. So you write a blog regularly, don't you? Which is excellent. It's called, is it Ginger Gaijin something? What is it called? Grit Grace Ginger Gaijin, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. I haven't written very regularly recently, I should confess, but yes, my blog, Grit Grace Ginger Gaijin. Gaijin, by the way, is the Japanese word for foreigner. So that's kind of what I get called when I'm in Japan. And I'm ginger, which you probably can't tell from the audio, but it's true.
It's true.
We can confirm, right?
Yeah, we can confirm that Levi is ginger. So how long have you been writing a blog?
I first started writing my first blog. I think I started writing was when I came to Japan for the first time. So that was like 9 years ago. And then I wrote just kind of mostly for people who were like supporting me, who were following me at that time. I wrote a little blog. And then it died off. And then when I came back to Japan, or actually before, I guess, about 5 years ago, when I knew I was coming out to Japan long term, I wanted to have something as a way to kind of people to follow what was going on, not just with what I'm doing kind of in a practical sense, but actually, kind of the experiences and how I kind of dealing with them, and hopefully share kind of some ways that God's growing me through all that stuff. So yeah, it's kind of been on and off, to be honest, the last sort of 4 years, kind of ebbed and flowed, but mostly I've kept it going.
Sure. So you initially started writing for the purpose of helping other people stay in touch, know what you're getting up to. Have you found just the process of writing a blog helpful for you personally?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I've realized over the last few years that I'm someone who very much thinks best when I write. So often I don't really realize actually what it is I'm really thinking or even feeling until I write. And as I write and then even do editing on writing, it becomes more and more clear to me what it is I've been thinking, and I kind of understand things better. And I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Do you think blogging is like, would you encourage everyone to get involved in blogging, or do you think it's only for people who might find it helpful to process things?
I think I would encourage everyone to try. Like, I mean, there's probably not everybody who is wired the same and who will, feel that blogging helps them to process things as well. But I mean, I didn't really appreciate that about myself until I started blogging, and there's lots of actually which I don't put on my blog, but lots of things I just write and to help me to think. And sometimes those thoughts end up becoming blogs, or they end up kind of getting put into prayer letters or articles and things. But yeah, I think it's definitely worth trying to write a blog. And
so this whole almost like a discipline of writing things down. So even if you are writing something in mind that this is going to go to an audience, do you think it's even helpful just to write things down for the sake of like, I know no one's going to read this, but this is just helpful for me, like almost like what journaling is? Yeah.
I mean, I've never really done kind of journaling properly, which people have kind of told me about it, and I've kind of done vague things which are probably journaling-esque, but I think, writing, when you're kind of having to write in a way which is clear and makes sense and which someone else could read and understand, I think really forces you to think clearly. Like oftentimes when you're just thoughts in your head or conversations, you can have ideas which are kind of only half formed, or you haven't really clearly thought through actually what you think or why do you think it and why are you feeling this. And so like writing something, putting it in front of you so you can look at it, I think it really helps you to crystallize what it is you're thinking, and maybe helps you see actually, I was thinking this, but actually that doesn't really make sense because of this other thing here, or even before people give you kind of feedback or respond, like I think you can respond to your own writing, and that, for me anyway, I find that helps.
But moving to a brand new culture, I assume, I've never done that, but I assume that takes a lot of processing and getting used to. So would the whole writing process be something really helpful in that specific situation?
I mean, a lot of what I was writing was, part of it was the stuff which I've found most helpful has either been with engaging with kind of aspects of Japanese culture which I just didn't really understand, or kind of processing events that happened to me, like part of the transition or kind of different things which happened the last 4 years. So, but those things, I think definitely it helps me to kind of really deal with the kind of the oddness of Japan and kind of make it feel more normal. And I think just even like just the aspect of writing kind of forces you to kind of face up to those differences and those kind of cultural things you're struggling with. Whereas the times when I don't write can be a way of just kind of avoiding dealing with it, like, oh wow, it's kind of bugging me, but just leave it over there. So I think it takes a bit of bravery for me for writing, and especially to publish stuff. But I think part of that is the thing which helps you to really to grow through the struggles.
Would you say that digital technology has been a help or a hindrance to you being a cross-cultural missionary?
Yes. I mean, definitely both. Like there is some really good stuff about technology. There's some things it may sound crazy, but I think at the moment in Japan, I really wouldn't be able to just exist without my smartphone. Navigating through Japan's train lines and just getting around in Tokyo, especially, for that technology is really helpful. Especially interacting with and getting to know and becoming friends with younger people. There's an app in Japan called Line, which is kind of Japan's version of WhatsApp, and that's what people use to communicate. So the only people who I send kind of text messages to are people over the age of like 40. Everyone else is either Line or it's Messenger. And so without that, you can't even talk to people. Like, people are organizing events and things. And for sports, people organize training, and it's all coming through my phone. And so, if I tried to do life in Japan without that, it would make it much harder for myself. As well as, being able to have things like dictionaries and language apps and all these things. So yes, there are many ways which are really helpful, really good. But, the flip side of that is that you can spend an entire day just staring at your phone, right, and achieving nothing. And often the stuff we use on social media to engage with the world just leaves you feeling kind of depressed and fed up, or, it's, really good, but also can be really, really dangerous, I guess.
So in Japanese culture, what is their relationship like with technology?
Yeah, like I think most people in Japan wouldn't imagine Japan without technology. Like technology really defines a lot of Japanese life, from everything from trains to toilets and everything in between. That, you know, technology is kind of embedded into like your entire life, and part of being a Japanese person, you could say, would be, you know, understanding and using technology well. That's what helps a country with, you know, twice the population of the UK, with not that much more livable landmass to kind of get on, is everyone's using the technology, and kind of, yeah, that's how life happens.
We'll cut out this awkward pause here. So you mentioned how you have to use apps, social media, just to keep relationships going, to go along to the events that everyone else is going to. Have you ever had to consciously change your social media habits because you found just how like addictive it could be, or how much time it takes out of your day?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So at the moment, even I have my phone on me, I've gone through stages where I use Facebook, and I use Instagram. I don't use Twitter. That's kind of a conscious choice, because when I tried using it 5 years ago, it was just a drain on my time. So I didn't bother with Twitter. But even with Instagram, which I kind of really enjoy using, and, you know, take photos, and the feeds I'm kind of subscribed to can be really positive, helpful things of like Japanese, and you can engage with people kind of through that. But also, you know, you can just scroll endlessly on that. So I have times where I will just delete some apps from my phone, to kind of break the habit of every time I have a spare moment, like every time there's a pause to kind of to look and just to flick. And so I find that, you know, the kind of keeping up to date and making sure you haven't missed out on whatever is the newest, latest information. For me, that became a kind of a real temptation I had to battle. And sometimes I think that just means you just take a cold break. And something else I did last year, I kind of started this occasionally, maybe once a month or so. I would take a day or 2 days of personal retreat. And for me, what I meant, sometimes I couldn't really afford to kind of go traveling away somewhere. But I would just turn off my phone, say, for instance, on Monday evening, and I would decide I wouldn't look at it again until Wednesday evening. And I tell people who need to know that, you know, I'm not going to be contactable. But I just, you know, turn off the phone, put it in a drawer, leave it, and just take a break to realize that I can lead a healthy, God-pleasing, enjoyable life without my smartphone. So I think maybe it's dumb of me, but I need to kind of remind myself that that's true, that I'm not dependent on it.
Were there any other benefits that you found from just not having your phone on for a set period of time, other than realizing that you don't need to be dependent on it?
Yeah, I mean, so going back to the topic of writing, I actually find that having a phone with so much social media can really be a block to my kind of creative writing process. So I think, at least for me, sometimes I need to go through the moment of kind of boredness and not having anything to do to get to a point where my brain starts thinking creatively and starts to dwell on the problems, and gives me ideas so I can start jotting down and writing. And if I'm constantly filling every kind of blank moment in my day with Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, then my brain doesn't have the space, the margin to kind of create and to think. And I find I'm more creative, I'm more prayerful, I'm more engaged with a lot of stuff when I take breaks from my phone.
I think that's really healthy, to take breaks from your phone, and just a reminder that you don't need to constantly be entertained. You know, you could kind of just enjoy the little things in life and just enjoy your walk to work without listening to music and so on. And that's something like I've really struggled with because, I'm from the States, I'm living in the UK. And although the culture is like, there's no language barrier, there's still a lot of cultural differences.
There's a bit of language barrier, let's be honest.
A little bit, but nothing like, English to Japanese.
Yeah.
So, but I find that I'll use social media to kind of distract myself or like TV or movies to distract myself. So I'll spend like every Sunday, I don't watch any TV whatsoever or films or anything. And I just go to church and read my Bible. But I also started a blog living here, and I don't share it with many people because it's so hard to share something like that. So I'll like send it to my friends and family, but I usually like don't post it a lot of places. I don't know, something I struggle with. But just as you were saying before with the blog, it really does help you process what you're going through and process your thoughts. So I'd really encourage anyone, if they're living cross-culturally, to write about it. But also just write in general. Even if you're not living cross-culturally, it's just such a healthy coping mechanism.
Definitely. I can't remember who said this, but I read someone once, like some writer, kind of liken sort of publishing their work to the equivalent of kind of doing like aerobic exercise in a library. Like you just go there and you're kind of drawing all this attention to yourself, and you feel really awkward and really kind of self-aware. And I mean, you would if you did, exercise in the library, and I'm not suggesting you do that, but the writing, I kind of sticking something up, even on my own Facebook page and just posting a link. And for me, that can be like the hardest point of writing. But I think, even if you don't want to do that, like if you don't feel like you want to publish, or if you just want to share stuff with a friend, like just writing stuff in an email or something, or on, Messenger, you can just write kind of some thoughts you've had and share it with close friends. I think it's definitely a worthwhile discipline or just habit to kind of get into.
You mentioned about how you're careful with what apps you have on your phone. Like you don't have Twitter because of the time sink that it was. I heard this phrase recently about how we've got smartphones, but they're not necessarily wise phones.
That's good.
So what kind of criteria do you judge apps and things like that by to decide whether this is a wise thing for you to have or not?
That's a really good question. I think so. One of the things I think about, partly with, I guess, which apps would I use, but also in terms of how would I use them, is I'm always wanting to check with myself, am I using this for influence or for image? Which, I mean, is this an app or platform that I'm using to encourage people or help people to be more like Jesus? Or is this an app or platform I'm using to make people like me more? And for me, I think I have to be really honest with, a lot of things like Facebook and even Instagram and Twitter and stuff. We can use them to make people just think that we're witty or intelligent or well read, or we're in the right group, or whatever. And I think if that's for me, if that becomes like the main thing that an app or platform is becoming, then I maybe need to take a step back, and maybe I need to consider whether it's worth having. I mean, I think that's another thing which for apps kind of more generally as well, I kind of try to think on is, how does it make me feel like using the app, or how does it affect not just my time, but like my energy and kind of my emotional kind of status? Because if you're using an app and the kind of net outcome of it is that you just kind of feel worse about yourself, or you feel, you end up kind of actually going on it to just kind of waste kind of 10 minutes as a distraction, but you come back and you're more distracted, or, it's not, a lot of things don't really feed us. They don't give us energy. It's the equivalent of kind of just snacking down on kind of sugary like foods every time you get a bit peckish. Like, sometimes you just need to drink a glass of water and go for a walk. And sometimes like apps which are meant to be just fun. So this is maybe I'm too much of a killjoy here. Like I do enjoy life. I love games and stuff, but I have zero games on my phone. I almost never put games on my phone because every time I have in the past, they've just been a bit of a drain on me, but just not just for time, but for my energy and kind of, you know, I never feel more creative or more inspired or more, never like more alive after playing Angry Birds or whatever. And I mean, it's not, you know, I'm sure people can play it and define it. You know, different people have different ways of engaging with media and games and stuff. But for me, I just don't bother having them because I found they didn't, overall, at the end of the day, I didn't feel like I had enjoyed my day as much when I had them as when I didn't have them.
So something that I found, because I'm a Survey Asia worker from the States to the UK, when I went to orientation in the US, there was a team going to Japan. And when I asked them why they wanted to go to Japan, they all talked about Studio Ghibli movies. Yes. And they were like, yeah, I just really love anime, so I want to go to Japan. And I think that's great that, you know, you love Japanese culture or part of Japanese culture and you want to go and like experience that. And that's a great way to start. And then you had martial arts and that's why you wanted to go. Not the only reason, but you know, yeah. So what advice do you have for people who are interested in going to Japan?
I think, you know, even if it is something like, I just love Studio Ghibli movies, or, you know, I love this Japanese author, or I really want to see a sumo match or something, you know, like, I think for me, when I look back on my kind of journey to being here now and committed to long-term mission in Japan, I've seen how actually some of the kind of the guiding and the prompting in that has just been the interest I've had in Japan. I mean, I also was, after I started doing jiu-jitsu, I kind of was introduced to Studio Ghibli, and those things just kind of got me interested and intrigued in Japan. And obviously I can't kind of say this definitely because God is sovereign and he can do, he could have done other things, but actually if I hadn't had those kind of just initial interest in Japan, I don't think I would be here today. I would think I'd be alive, but I don't think I would be, you know, doing what I'm doing. So I think if you have an interest in Japan and you just want to go and see it, then you go on a Survey Asia trip and experience the country, and but just go with a mind and a heart that's open to the possibility that God might be using Studio Ghibli anime to call you to serve the people of Japan and not just to enjoy their culture.
That was a lot of fun interviewing Levi. He had a lot of wisdom, a lot of things to say that were really practical for us to take away. What would you say is the main thing that stuck with you, Kat?
I really loved how he talked about how social media can be used as a distraction. And that's something we should be aware of. And instead of using social media to distract us from our problems, you know, sometimes what you really need is just a glass of water and a walk. And I loved how Levi said that. I loved how he brought it up, especially coming from a place like Japan, where social media is everything. And he was just so aware of how we distract ourselves. And I think that's something that's really going to stick with me.
Yeah, I think the thing that will stick with me is just that simple question of asking when posting things on social media, is it for my image, or is it for influence? And I think, as Christians, we should always be thinking about how can we use things to influence people for good, rather than trying to build up our own kingdom or to make ourselves look good. So I think that's a really, really helpful measurement to look at how we're using social media. We hope you've enjoyed listening to this episode of the Serve Asia podcast. If you have any questions, feedback or anything else, then we would love to hear from you. You can get in touch by emailing uk.podcast@omfmail.com. Alternatively, you could send us a direct message on Instagram @Serve Asia Podcast. If you'd like to support the podcast, then do share it with anyone you know who has a heart for sharing Jesus cross-culturally. And also a 5-star review on iTunes goes a long way as well. Thanks for listening and see you on the next episode.